Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want or whatever my guests want to talk about this week. And here we're going to be doing a spoiler talk for the new remake of Mean Girls 20 years later. We have a new musical version of Mean Girls based off of the Broadway show that Tina Fey adapted for her own screenplay. And I'm going to let both my guests here introduce themselves. Heidi, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Hi, my name's Heidi Ervin, and I am a filmmaker based in Nashville, Tennessee. This is my second time interviewing with Shane. I was on one of his podcasts discussing Black Holler, which I am the producer and actor, writer of one of the producers, writers, and
Mhm.
actresses involved in that horror comedy. And I'm just a very hardcore Mean Girls 2004 fan. I feel like I can speak the Mean Girls language. Whenever someone is a super fan, I tend to get along with them and I want to know why they like it. So I'm excited to discuss the 2024 version, which I just saw.
And Shawn.
Hey, what's up? My name is Shawn Cornelius, and I'm an actor and an interior stylist in Nashville. And I'm also a huge Mean Girls fan, the original. So I'm very excited to get into what that was like to experience that from that angle, differences, thoughts, feelings. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, just to set the stage kind of for everybody listening, so this is indeed I guess the path to where this film came from for those who have seen the 2004 film that Tina Fey wrote and has a supporting role in. This film was then adapted into a Broadway musical by Tina Fey, which I didn't get a chance to see the Broadway show when it was in New York and everything. And now they're taking this Broadway show and bringing it back to theaters and remaking the film. So, a la the producers. So, for those who know that journey, that was a much longer journey, though. That took like decades before Mel Brooks turned that into a musical and then turned it into a film. This one, it's all, of course, of 20 years. And is this new Mean Girls fresh, different, worth the wait, worth the effort? We'll get into that. But Heidi, what are your general thoughts on the new film?
I think film is fun. And I think if you're, so I can't really separate myself from someone who is seeing this story told for the first time
Mhm.
as this movie musical version. So I really don't know what I would think. But going into it being a big fan of the original, I think you could have fun. You might enjoy picking it apart with another friend, and that, I think they did a good job in some ways. I thought that the direction was amazing. I
Mhm.
know that these are first time feature film directors, and I was very impressed with how they filmed a musical. I thought it translated really well to the screen. I wasn't a fan of the music, and I loved a lot of the performances, and I thought they did a good job of kind of refreshing the jokes as best they could and still hitting all the same beats that we all loved. So it was just a very tall order. And I think, of course, it could have been better, but I did have to applaud them overall. I had a fun time.
Definitely agree. This was certainly a fun time. And before I get into my thoughts, Sean, what were your thoughts on the film?
Okay, well, I'm a big fan of Tina Fey, so it's like I'm rooting for you and a big fan of the original, um, but highly critical, naturally. So I was able to enjoy, I would say, more of it than I thought I would. Um, but it missed a lot of opportunities for me as a fan.
Mhm. Yeah, for me, I feel like the biggest problem that I had with this film was that, so the original film is like, I don't know, 95 to like 100 minutes. This film isn't considerably longer, but then it squeezes in a lot of songs. So like, a lot of musicals wind up being well over 2 hours because like you're trying to tell a story and you also have these big musical numbers and stuff like that. I feel like at the expense of the songs, this story got truncated and just rushed throughout the whole entire film. And there's a lot of things like I know a common criticism I've seen and kind of feel similar is the idea that you see a lot less of Regina George being absolutely terrible. And it's just like the whole entire point is Regina George is supposed to be terrible. And they took a lot of things and put them into like montages, which were well directed and fun and quick and have a lot of personality. But like you need to sit in those moments and really experience that for you to actually like feel the emotional progression of the film. I think Katie's like corruption per se felt a little rushed too. And it's just one of those things I'm like, oh, we're already at this part of the movie. Because like I've watched the original 2004 movie a lot. So like I know all the beats. I've recently just rewatched it too, because I'll be talking about it for another podcast. And it's just like, wow, they moved through a lot of this. And I also understand that it is 20 years later and they smoothed over certain things. And there's definitely certain things that happen in the first film that they didn't really hit on in this one because it's like probably not something that you want to have in a movie in 2024. And I feel like one of the big things too is like at the very end, jumping to the end, at the end of the original film, they come to like an understanding that everybody kind of has their own path, but like they're not mean anymore to each other. This turns into like a big party at like the dance and like everybody's BFFs now. And I'm just like, I don't know if I feel like this is completely earned at this point. Like, I get in the original film that, they're all okay with each other. And honestly, in real life, that's perfectly fine. Like as long as you're not like horrible people to each other. But this film just like rushed to like we're gonna have a big fun happy ending. And love happy endings, but like I don't know, most of the things in this I don't feel like felt fully earned by the amount of time they dedicated to them in the film. The song wise, there was a couple of them that stood out, and I feel like they did because of the performers and less the music. Because, like, for me specifically, I really liked Renee Rapp and her performance, and Olui Carvajalo, who the second she started singing, I'm like, it's Moana. But
Yeah.
I loved her as Janice, and I think she did really good with the performance and like the singing and stuff like that. But yeah, this isn't going to be a musical that I'm going to like go back and listen to the songs over and over again. Probably not. Um, Honestly, I probably can't tell you any of the songs after seeing this like 5 days ago, except
No
Regina
box.
Regina George saying her name. Um, which that's probably the most memorable thing because they put it in the trailer and it's literally just her saying her name. But like I had fun with it. That's the thing. And I feel like a lot of the fun came from the actors and the performance. And I could respect like they tried to make us feel like a 2024 experience too with like the incorporation of social media and stuff like that. And I did think it was a fun little detail to have Janice and Damien be like our narrators through it. I thought that was like a fun little thing, but overall, like I had a fun time. But I guess what were some of the things that both of you really enjoyed about the film that made it fun for you to stand out?
I have some loves. Things that I really enjoyed was Regina. The casting, I like the casting was really done well. I enjoyed that's a let me get to Karen's performance maybe. She was the strongest for me. I really enjoyed what they did with that character. I enjoyed her 100% of the time. I liked Caddy's like villainous moments. Like in comparison to Lindsay Lohan, she kept her Queen Bee resurgence pretty likable throughout. But this girl like kind of explored like a more sinister side that I thought was fun and like a new take on it. Damien, I think, was really like fresh air in that role that is really beloved. So he did a really good job. And I think it is a pro move in the representation they had in this version because that was some of the biggest feedback in editing, the perpetuating of some of those problematic stereotypes. Those were all pro decisions for me. And then I'll wait until you ask for hates.
Okay. How about you, Heidi?
I also thought, Renee Rapp kind of stood out as a superstar. I think that the Regina role, those were the big issues to fill, and she nailed it. That was a tall order, and she, in a lot of ways, I think even surpassed, maybe even Rachel McAdams' performance. Just it was a different take on it, and
Mhm.
she had a little bit more to do with the songs. It was just completely nailed it. Yeah, the Damien character stood out. Karen's role was also kind of bigger than it was in the original. She had a song and she
Mhm.
just had more bits. So that this is sort of the dim-witted one of the bunch, and so they gave her so much to do. They amped up that character in a fun way. Um, yeah, Janice, wonderful, engaging performer. I didn't completely love the take on the character because she just wasn't giving me that meanness I wanted. But I did really think that she was a wonderful performer, and I fell for her a lot. Just she had a very empathetic performance, and I think that that was a good take. And looking at the 2004 version, which I also watched recently, it I'm peers with those actresses with that
Mhm.
time period, and seeing like the party scene, and there's a stack of CDs in the back. I was like, they just nailed the time period in a way while still making it over the top and fun. And I was excited to see what they did with the 2024 version. And so adding in the TikTok, social media takes, and how that becomes sort of a form of bullying, I thought that was really well done and fun, and also rang true of the time. Some of the cringeworthy things in the 2004 version is like going through the cafeteria and all the stereotypes, and everyone is very segregated. And I liked that that wasn't the way it was in this version. So those were things where you're like, yeah, Mean Girls could use a little bit of a reboot, just so that it's doesn't have those cringe moments and a younger audience can appreciate it the way I did when I was loving it in 2004. So yeah, there were a lot of, some of the callbacks I loved were Tina Fey and Tim Meadows coming back to reprise those roles, and now they're a couple.
Mhm.
Spoiler. I was like, that's fun. I like to see that. I liked that the Janice character is a lesbian in this version.
Mhm.
I was like, why not? It's not so taboo that is the reason why she and Regina fell apart, in middle school whenever they were friends. I liked that take on it. There were a lot of things I liked about it as an update for 2024. So I will say that. And I thought that a lot of the jokes, like we're waiting for certain moments and punchlines, and they're giving it to us with a little spin. And I'm sure that's extremely hard to do to top all those jokes. And I thought they did that well too.
Yeah, I from what I understand, Renee Rapp was Regina George in like the Broadway show, and I'm a big fan of her and the rest of the cast in The Sex Lies of College Girls. So like I was pretty excited seeing her being in this film, and I think she did a great job. And Rice, who made such a big splash in The Nice Guys, playing with like Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe in that film, like she's a really talented young actress, and she definitely does a really good job here. I think the moment that really got me with Karen, she is so dumb. In this
Mhm.
was when she was eating and doing her makeup and then proceeds to start putting the grilled cheese on her face and realizing she actually liked it and committed to it. I'm just those little moments, I'm just like, that was really funny. Damien's fantastic, and I almost lost it in the theater when they show up to Katie's party and he's not driving a car this time. He's on a scooter. And like those little things really got me. I
Mhm.
know like I kind of like this Aaron Samuel better than the original Aaron Samuel. I feel like it felt like there was actually like more of like a personality connection with her and Katie, I felt like this time. At least to me, because like in the original one, it just felt like, wow, he's hot. And like I actually felt like, oh, maybe these two actually seem like they could be a cute couple together instead of it just being two very attractive young people. And then like the veteran actors, like I thought it was an interesting choice that they made her like have like a single mom. And of course Jenna Fisher. It was fun. It's actually kind of weird seeing some of these actresses like getting into that peer. We're like, oh my God, Jenna Fisher's a mom in something. That was one of my first reactions when she popped up on the screen. I'm like, oh, it's making me feel
Mhm.
old. And then I did really enjoy having Tina Fey and Tim Meadows back. I low-key love Tim Meadows. And
Mhm.
like even just like the small stuff, like him popping up as a cannibal in Brooklyn Nine-Nine that like Andy Samberg meets in prison. Like even just like the little things that he does. And I really enjoyed having them both back. And
Mhm.
I thought it was the strangest thing when the trailer came out and like John Hamm was Coach Carr. I'm like, why? Like, I get why we would want to see John Hamm pop up into something like this, but like, why would John Hamm like come in and do this like tiny role? And like, he had some fun with it. It's like Katie needs to lift with her, lift with her legs, and like I appreciated like those veteran actors popping up for like pretty small roles in ways, but like having a fun time with them. So, but there definitely was some interesting reactions when I talked about Aaron Samuel. Heidi, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I guess I didn't have the same feelings because I I remember kind of laughing when he turned his head around. I was just like, oh, I don't know. I felt a little bit bad about that, but they're just it didn't really work for me. I didn't really believe their chemistry. So I'm interested. It's cool that you did, but I was just like, I'm kind of seeing a little more chemistry between Katie and Regina. There was a lot more going on with those zoom ins and like reactions just being drawn to someone.
That would have been
Um,
a bold choice that they
it
definitely
really would
did not
have.
go with.
People wouldn't have liked they would be like, not my Regina. But I don't know. I just was like, he just wasn't a standout to me, I guess.
Fair.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised he didn't have a song or something, whenever you see a musical, you're just sort of like, well, let me see this guy perform and have his
Mhm.
moment. And he never really got to. So I guess he was just sort of in the middle for me. I didn't really think he was a standout.
That's fair. Well,
Man, they must have cut his song.
Maybe they
I thought he
did.
was really cute, and I'm really sad that the internet is bullying him right now, and I think that's not the message of the
Yeah.
movie. So I feel pigeonholed into only saying nice things. But I wouldn't, I would agree with you. Like, the chemistry was off. It has nothing to do with his looks or
Yeah.
his attractiveness. And, you know, I like all the decisions that they made in casting to be more realistic, and I thought that was super cool. But it was a chemistry thing, and I think it was by design they were turning it up between Regina and Katie. So But yeah, he's cute enough. I mean, good for him. I don't want to hate all over him. I think he's getting a lot of hate on the internet. That's hilarious, but it sucks because
I
he's
saw
just trying to do a good
I saw an interview with him and it made me like him more because it was reminding me of Robert Pattinson talking about Twilight. And he was just like,
job.
I like Aaron. He's just like a dude. And he's just sort of a prop. He's not really a
Mm.
part of any of the action. He just sort of watches it all. And he's just sort of in the middle of this fighting. And he had an awareness of it where I was just like,
Mm.
he's aware that he didn't have as much going on in the movie. And I think more will come for that actor. This wasn't his time to shine, maybe, but maybe not everyone feels that way. And I think there's going to be better stuff for him down the road. Maybe he'll be the next Robert Pattinson where, he was joked on for years about Twilight, but that wasn't what he wanted to do or what he was capable of. So hopefully this guy will break through in an amazing movie.
He's gonna wind up being in a Robert Eggers film, trapped on an island at some point.
That would be great.
Which, to be honest, Aaron Samuels is one of the worst, like the weakest parts of this story just to begin with.
Yeah.
Because, like, really, when it comes down to it, like, Katie likes him in the first place because he's just attractive. So it's
Yeah.
like, that's the whole entire thing. And that, you know, don't think about it that much when you're watching the original film because it kind of just it feels of that time period too. Like there's so many better things that Mean Girls does compared to other teen movies at that point. To the point where they had to make a whole entire movie called Not Another Teen Movie that points out how terrible teen movies are about teenagers at that point. But like I guess they had an opportunity to shake it up, and I feel like that was like the main thing that they choose not to. It was just
Mhm.
kind of still the same. I do like, you know what? See, now I'm just going to be thinking about what if Katie and Regina wound up together in this, and honestly, that would have been 10 times better than just the regular storyline anyway. So, would have been very interesting. In
Yeah.
which, like, I don't know. This might be me looking too much into like the original film, but like Regina winding up on the field hockey team in that, and how they didn't directly talk about the field hockey players in the movies being lesbian, but there's definitely some like queer coding there with them. And maybe that was their way of being like, maybe that's why she was so defensive about Janice to begin with. I don't know. But they never, like, it's 2004. They weren't in a major studio film. They weren't going to be tackling that then. But this is
Mhm.
2024. They totally could have. And
Mhm.
they didn't. And they just went the boring route and wound up with, like, yeah, he's a cute guy. Met him in calculus class, and there you go. But
Mhm.
there's definitely, like, certainly some fun things about this and like the performers and stuff like that. But I guess Shawn, what were some of your hates for the film that you had that you wanted to talk about?
Well, you were talking about like pace, like the pace for me, the original movie is so tight,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think it drags for me at all in the way that it moves. And we had a pacing issue at the beginning of the movie when she's like, "Yeah, I took the job," and then she just starts running and packing her backpack. It felt so cheesy to me. I'm like, you're not legit moving right now. Get your suitcase. Like and then boom, we're in North Shore. So I was kind of like whiplash. I was like, okay, I don't know if I liked that or not in the pacing of this film. And then the music started and continued to be unearned, as you say. Like it felt like contrived. I love Gretchen Wieners, and what they did to her in this movie is not okay with me. Like, why are we not stabbing Caesar? Her break felt like it wasn't climactic enough. I love that little actress. She's so cute and she's so talented, and it's not her fault. So those were just some of my hates. But you guys are like speaking my mind right now. I'm like, yes, yes, I felt that. So,
Well, and I feel
but
like it says a lot that we didn't bring up Gretchen up to this point.
Mhm.
And that's a sad thing because she there's so many great
well,
moments between like that group of
the
characters.
three-way call. To your point with
Mhm.
the Aaron storyline, the three-way call never happens. Like Gretchen doesn't. We have this momentum happening when Gretchen's like, "I promise, I won't tell. It'll be our little secret." She tells Regina immediately. Regina three-way calls her, and then she's perfectly set up to betray her. So
Mhm.
it all adds up to just a pacing issue for me that I didn't enjoy. And I would have liked to see like a jukebox musical because of the original like soundtrack of the movie. Like that would have been so much more fun than her that the music they use. But that's a different movie, which is what I wanted
Mhm.
Tina Fey to create.
Mhm. Which that's it's a very interesting point with the whole three-way call thing because it is a generational thing. It's like what teenagers talk on the phone? I work at a college. Nobody answers their phone. And it's there should have been some ways that you could have incorporated more modern ways of setting that up. But I feel like instead they're just like, well, let's just cut to the chase.
Mhm.
And that you're right. And like I mentioned before, the pacing was the problem. Like everything felt rushed. And like, oh, that opening sequence is like if you don't like musicals, that is the moment where you're just like, ugh, because it felt so much like I'm making a musical. And like the running off and singing and stuff like that. I'm just like, well, we're jumping right into this now. And like you have to really hook an audience with like an opening musical number. And like trying to think of some recent musicals, like I can listen to the music from The Greatest Showman over and over and over again. Do I love the film as a film? P.T. Barnum as a well as an actual human being was monstrous, and he was still an asshole in the movie. And but like I love the music and have tons of fun with it, and that opening number really gets you into the movie. And I'm like, I think that was the moment where I'm like, most of this movie, I was sitting there like, I'm having a fun enough time, but I'm like, I'm not loving this. And there was a couple moments that like brought me back in. Like the one I felt like I appreciated the moment between Katie and her mom after like the fall and like she's crying in her room and stuff like that. And I think that really came down to like the performances because like the whole entire movie's so rushed at that point. It just like at least they slowed down, have like one emotional moment here and I'm like, okay, I could feel this a little bit better. And then we're like back to the mad dash because this was made for this this generation in terms of like with everything in social media, everything's TikTok, Snapchats, everything's so fast, quick, and everything. And it felt of that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
this needs to slow it down because yeah, that original film is so perfect. Everything, like structurally and pacing wise, hits exactly when they need to. It builds up perfectly. And I just felt like there's so many great moments, like character moments in Mean Girls that just felt watered down and rushed over here and in favor of the musical numbers. And like, did I enjoy Janice running all through the school and doing shenanigans on her way out? That was fun. And then that moment where her musical number ends on Regina getting hit by the bus, I'm like, they're really gonna do this, aren't they? And it's just like, stop, bam, bus. I'm just like, well, they sure choreographed that in a very specific way. But like, it's one of those things where it's just like, I wish that I was spending more time with these characters like you did in the original film, and I just feel like they did it.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say like Chicago is a perfect example of world building, like whenever you translate a stage performance into the movie. You can go into the mind's eye. And I think a lot of the time we were trapped in a school, in a POV, in a, and they missed the opportunities to like go into Regina's mind and everyone else's to really, make it more interesting to enjoy throughout, because there are cinematic moments in the original with like Regina being carried in by all those jocks in like gym class that are like more cinematic than some of the times that they went. Like the plastics walking down the hallway when Katie's become popular, like that was a cinematic moment. I was missing some iconic, like make it cool. They made it too like POV TikTok-y. We don't want TikTok, we want music video. Like that's the way you do that after Barbie happened.
Which I think they did go in that route with a couple of like when they you first meet Regina and like the film grading changes and like the aspect ratio changes. I'm like, that felt interesting and different, and it was shift changing it up a bit. There were definitely some things that I missed from like the original film in terms of like the storytelling and like I love the choice of like Katie's lived in Africa her whole life and she brings that with her. And
Mhm.
like when the fight happens and you have like the animal noise, like all that stuff is so much fun. And I didn't
Yeah.
think I would miss that so much. And then like the fight happened when the burn book was revealed, and I'm just like, that felt anticlimactic because it went straight to the principal just being like, everybody to the gym. And then it's just like, oh,
Mm.
it felt like there was a lot more fun there in the original film, but like I could definitely see the perspective of, like they could have went in a lot more interesting way, and I feel like this film would have fit for that and being a little bit more abstract with like the musical numbers, but they did lean really heavily into like, well, we're in this school, we're in this house for this party, we're gonna make it work, and it did kind of feel a little constrained.
Yeah, it seemed like they cut, to make space for all of the songs, which didn't really move the story forward. Um, that's kind of the biggest problem with it's just like, and then we're going to add these songs, which, we already know the story. So that's already a tall order that we're not getting a lot of new information from these songs, and they're not particularly that catchy to me. But I felt like what they cut to make space was just like the evil, like the girls being mean, all of that kind of deliciously evil things that made the original so fun. Regina with her scheming and how she manipulated people. We didn't see her doing that very much. We didn't see Gretchen sort of playing both sides and knowing so much. We didn't get to see that and have as much fun with them. Even Gretchen's song is kind of sad and also very short. Just like, why don't I love myself? You know, Singing to a music box, and it's like, ooh, we were having a lot more fun at this point in the original story, being in the mall, and I can see why they didn't want to have a mall scene in the 2024 version, but there were just some things that made the movie so much fun that they didn't have time for in this version. And I think like, yeah, that was really the even, Katie didn't have as much of that trickery, because like the not another teen movie stereotypes growing up, those were the movies I saw that were about high school, were
Hmm.
mostly these, I don't know, coming from like an actor's perspective, it wasn't anything like, wow, I really wish I could be in this movie. What fun that must have been. It was like, oh, she has glasses and a ponytail, and then seeing Mean Girls, I was like, all the best parts are females. I've never seen a movie where there were that many great roles for this age range. And you know, Janice has just as strong a part, really, as Regina or any of the Mean Girls, And Damien, I mean, he had a very fun role for a type that I hadn't seen in a movie before. you know? And so those are things like you want to give those opportunities to people in the musical version and in the reboot. But they just didn't get to have as much fun with that kind of like deliciously evil stuff that the original cast kind of got to.
Yeah, this was not so Mean Girls.
Not as mean. Definitely not as mean.
And I wonder if that's a sign of like the times changing and stuff like that. Because here's the
Yeah.
thing. I work at a college, so like and I interact with students in a academic context all the time. So like, and I don't really have like younger siblings or younger cousins and stuff that are in high school. So I can't speak to what high school kids do. Like to replace them all, I don't know what they do for fun. But like it's one of those things where it's just like, I don't know, it feels like in general, I feel like teen movies work in a way that you could reinvent them for new generations.
Mhm.
And I guess upon reflection, like there are a lot of things that really work about Mean Girls because maybe the time.
Right.
And it's just like, does it not have the same kind of magic without some of those kinds of things? And I can't imagine that people don't bully each other. I feel like you go on social media, it's a
Mhm.
hellscape. So like I feel like did this film really capitalize on that as much as it probably could have? Because people can get real mean online.
Yeah.
Out from experience. And it's one of those kinds of things where it's like maybe like I don't know if the filmmakers didn't want to dig too deep into people
Mhm.
being vicious, but like that's the whole entire like the movie's called Mean Girls. That's the whole entire reason why this film exists. But
Yeah, from the source material, you know?
mm, but at this point, I don't know. Do either of you have anything else that you wanted to add? I feel like I've probably mentioned most of the things that I wanted to talk about at this point.
I would like to say something positive that was a change they made. Although I did miss the they knotted the holes in the shirt when her like boobs get like they're trying to bully her. So there was a nod to that, but they changed the moment to a trend of like running mascara. And I was like, oh, that's cute and clever. And I guess I would say it's you have to like let go of something and let it be something else in this moment if you are a hardcore Mean Girls OG fan. And this is something different. It has the missing link for me is seeing the musical to understand its decision making and know why they went back to film as that, because the scooter Damien saying I want my pink shirt back, screaming it from the car on stage. They're gonna maybe be on a hover round because it doesn't make sense to bring a car on, in
Mhm.
a minor moment. And then going back to the movie, they would keep it. That felt cringe to me. I didn't enjoy it. I was like, what? That's ridiculous. What are you guys doing? Because I haven't seen the musical. Um, but yeah, I still enjoyed it for the most part. I enjoyed it. My curiosity got me there. And, I had to go through the process of this is not what I want it to be. It's something else. And that's okay. You know?
Absolutely. And my hope is that
I
like
would have loved more.
okay.
Moment. I would have more if it's not for millennials who love Mean Girls. It was like for another audience. But if it was for us, we needed more nostalgia and a return of the original cast interwoven. Like cast them as teachers, make them in the revenge party moment, like the trust fall thing. Like I needed more of that. So
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear from people who are seeing the story for the
Mhm.
first time and like this is their Mean Girls. I wonder what they think about it. Do they like the music and I bet if they saw the original version, they would be like kind of shocked at some of the things. Um, but I wonder what they would think because I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I'm coming at it from a different perspective, and even being a big fan of the original, I did enjoy this, and I think people, if you are a big fan, you've got to see it just to see what they did, and it's fun to talk about it because to see different people's opinions of it because it was such a beloved cult. I don't want to say cult classic because it was a huge movie, but
Mhm.
it's had staying power.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something. It was like, this is better. Mean Girls 2004 is better than it should be in every way. Like, why is it so good? And it's a
Yeah,
great script, great performances, and it's kind of a surprise. So now this version is living up to something that had no business being as good as it was, just for the genre, the time. They just struck a chord, and that kind of magic is very hard to recreate. So.
mm. Maybe this will be a good introduction for a younger generation because they're not ready for our Mean Girls, you know? And so this
Yeah.
is like a good way to like dip them in.
It's like, why is everybody so mean? It's like, because they were. It's like,
Yeah.
it's accurate, which,
Yeah.
but it's one of those kinds of things where I'm really hoping that this movie becomes that way for the new generation of, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. This definitely isn't millennials Mean Girls, and there's
Right.
definitely a culture shock, obviously, for millennials looking at this film and it being pretty different in terms of what it's trying to tackle. And it's one of those kinds of things where I've noticed some of my friends that I like do reviews with who are a bit younger than me are enjoying this a lot more and also don't have as big of a connection to the original film. And but in general, it seems like most people are having a fun time with it and enjoying it, which
Yeah.
it is a fun time. You should go out to the movies, show this film some love. But
Hmm.
at this
Yeah.
point, Heidi, Shawn, thank you so much for coming on and chatting some Mean Girls.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you
was
so
really
much.
fun.
And would you like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
shamelessly plug anything before we wrap up for the audience?
I don't have anything to plug right
Sure.
now.
You can follow me at Rogue Queer on Instagram to know what I'm up to in all things artistic and creative.
Awesome.
That's my shameless plug. I mean, you'll know there.
But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.